This is a big moment. What you just saw marked the end of an over 2-year-long journey in Geometry Dash. It's one of the most mentally challenging levels I've ever done in this game. It's a journey that's had some high points and many, many low points along the way. It's a level that I even almost considered giving up on forever. And that level was Dark Travel by JonathanGD. But you might be wondering, how? How is it that a level in Geometry Dash took me this long, especially considering there are much, much harder levels than this, some of which I've even beaten myself? Well, to put it simply, there were lots of factors that got in the way of me beating this, ranging from technical issues, to events in my own life outside of this game, and even my own skill level. And if you allow me some of your time, I'd like to tell you exactly how I spent more than 2 years of my life to finally beat Dark Travel. To explain why I wanted to do this level, we have to go back to my first time playing this game. I'd known of Geometry Dash's existence since 2015, and I'd played the free versions from time to time on other people's mobile phones before I actually got one of my own, which was a severely outdated iPhone 6. I didn't get the full version of the game until July 2019, which was around the time that I discovered the online Geometry Dash community, and more importantly, the custom user-created levels. I was absolutely mind-blown at the amount of passion that creators and players had for what I initially perceived as just a silly little auto-runner that maybe ripped off another game. Back then, I remember spending hours just watching videos of people playing online levels, from top 1 extreme demons like Bloodlust and Zodiac, to works of art like Magma Mound and Howl. As I became addicted to rewatching my favourite levels, I also became fascinated with their creators, and one of those creators I was most captivated by was JonathanGD. He was, and still is, known for making some of the longest levels in the game, and he remains one of the most popular level creators to this day, with levels like the Butiti series and the Future Funk series being some of his most well-known levels. And one of his first levels that exploded in popularity was Dark Travel. I remember watching the level on YouTube one day and instantly falling in love with it. It felt unlike many other levels I'd seen at the time, let alone played. It was atmospheric, long, it had an amazing song, it was constantly changing and introducing new ideas. In a time when most levels looked and felt the same to me, this really stuck out to me amongst the crowds, and I wanted to play it so badly. One problem though, I couldn't. I couldn't play the level because I honestly wasn't that good at the game at the time. My hardest level was Deadlocked, a medium demon that is way easier than Dark Travel, which was rated as a hard demon at the time. However, even if I wanted to play it, my iPhone 6 just couldn't handle it, and would crash every time I attempted to load the level. I slowly drifted away from GD in 2020, and you could even say that I quit the game entirely. However, I did upgrade to an iPhone 8 Plus during this time, which was powerful enough to run Dark Travel without crashing the game. I don't remember when exactly, but I decided to try a practice run of the level just for fun. And let's just say it took about 2,000 attempts to do in practice mode. I really struggled with it. After that, I stopped playing again and forgot about Geometry Dash for a while. That was until the start of 2021, when I finally rekindled my passion for this game, and subsequently made a comeback. With this new burst of confidence, I finally beat my first hard demons, and I also went for levels that were similar but easier to Dark Travel, like Lonely Travel. Considering Dark Travel introduced me to the Travel series of levels that were common at the time, I thought it would be fun to at least beat a few levels that were similar in style to prepare myself for eventually going for Dark Travel. However, even after beating those levels, I still hesitated to play the level. During my break in 2020, Dark Travel was re-rated from Hard to Insane Demon, the second hardest difficulty rating a level can receive. This re-rate shook me, and I didn't really touch the level again after that. At least on mobile. But then, Around July 2021, I got gifted a MacBook Pro by my father, and finally downloaded the Steam version of Geometry Dash. With this new MacBook, I began to play even harder levels, and I even started streaming on Twitch and uploading on YouTube in December 2021. In March 2022, I went on to beat my first Insane Demon, Windy Landscape. This was a big moment for me at the time, and it's left me wanting more. So I continued beating Insane Demons throughout 2022, going from Supersonic to Magma Bound, and ultimately, I beat Ultrasonic as my hardest level that August. After Ultrasonic, I began to consider playing Dark Travel. I did a few practice runs in secret between September and December 2022, although I couldn't commit to it because I was stuck on another level called Psychosis. I was also practicing another Insane Demon called Firewall, and was struggling to decide which level I should do. Ultimately, I decided to leave it to Democracy. After beating Psychosis that December, I put my next Insane Demon to a vote, and in a landslide, Dark Travel won, and so, my journey began. Before we move on any further, I unfortunately lost a lot of footage from my first streams on Dark Travel, so I'm a bit limited with what I can show from this period, and I may not exactly get all the details correct. With that out of the way, let's see how my first stint went. My journey began on the 27th of December 2022, and it didn't exactly get off to the best start. I was a little rusty at the game and only made it to around 20%, which isn't even the randomized wave. To go off on a little tangent for a moment, I think a part of the reason has to do with the fact that I had only just finished Psychosis, a hard demon, 2 weeks earlier. This level had taken me over 2 months to complete, which was the longest of any level at the time. How ironic. Even though I gave myself 2 weeks to practice before starting Dark Travel, I don't think it was barely enough time for me to really get connected with the level, and it would go to show in the progress I was making. In fact, I didn't make significant progress until around the 7th of January 2023, where I made it to the wave part and got the wrong combination. Oh, I got the wrong one? Oh, I thought I got it! This wouldn't be the last time I got the combination wrong. It's something I would struggle with even when I finally beat the level. It took a few days before I made progress again, where I died at the wooden spider part at 29%. Oh, come on! This part is mostly pretty easy, but the fast clicks can get to you sometimes, as it did here with me. And then, a few days later, I made it past the spider part and died immediately in the UFO. Oh, great. Okay. This is another part that gets pretty consistent, but some of the spam and timings can be tricky, and back then, this never really got consistent for me. This was especially the case when I died to the last click on the 7th of February. And finally, 10 days later, I made it past the UFO and made it all the way through the glitchy, hard to see red part, and to the halfway point. This and the next part are supposed to be free before things get crazy with the duel, but I unfortunately took a page out of Aeon Air and died to the double spike. Come on! While it may look like I was making some good progress, there was something that was really starting to concern me. If you've been keeping an eye on the timeline, you may have noticed it. My progress was really slow. It had taken over a month and a half just to get to the halfway point. This was distressing because the harder parts of the level are past 50%, and I was struggling with the so-called easier parts of the level. I knew before grinding that this level was going to take me a while, but I honestly thought it would only be a few weeks. The fact that it had taken over a month to make significant ground on the level was a worrying sign of things to come. However, the worst part of this was, after I got 47%, I had to take a break from not just the level, but streaming in general, because I had about a week of exams at school at the end of February, something I really need to focus on for reasons I'll explain later. But that was it for now. I was still at least happy to be making progress on the level, even if it wasn't very fast. And after a few weeks, I finally returned and got back to work. First of all, when I returned, one of my mods had made a thumbnail all on his own and gave it to me to use for this video. Special shout out to him because this thumbnail is genuinely amazing and he's also a bit of a goated player. Okay, as I was writing the script, he actually made another one. Like, this guy is actually the best. I don't know which one to use, so comment down below which one you prefer and I'll set the thumbnail you guys prefer to this video. More importantly though, I finally made it to probably the most famous part of Dark Travel, the duel.
Oh my word, come on, come on. How far can we make it? Come on, I'm probably going to die immediately, but let's see. I knew it. Let's freaking go! Yes! Yes, we are going to celebrate this, chat. Let's go!
This duel is one of the most choke-pointy parts of the level. It may look really colourful, but don't underestimate it. It is really easy to die here. 3 parts stand out as particularly massive choke points. Both of the dual ship parts at 57% and 60% are really tight, and it doesn't help that the dual ship physics are heavier than the single ship. But then there's the mini wave at 62%. Oh my word. Having this right at the end of this duel was really mean of Jonathan. It is so tight and hard compared to the rest of this entire section, and the erratic nature of the mini wave doesn't help either, let alone having 2 to control at once. I don't exactly remember how my progress in this duel went, but I definitely struggled with this part for a little bit. However, I pressed on, and about 10 days later, I finally made it past the duel and went to space. Literally.
Oh my goodness, come on.
This part is definitely much easier than the duel, however, I do sometimes struggle with a wave at 64%. But somehow, I managed to make it past it on this attempt, so I thought it was smooth sailing from here.
Oh my goodness, why?
Well, that went well. I'm still confused on why I died here. This ship is actually really easy. I guess nerves got to me, but at least I finally got past the duel.
Before going any further, I want to discuss the user coins in this level. Long story short, I decided to try and get the first 2 coins and not the third one. The first coin requires you to hit a button at 8% and then make a really tight jump at 13% to collect a skull. This jump caused quite a lot of deaths for me, but at least you get the coin for free after that. The second coin just requires you to get a hidden key at 26% and a skull at 36%, and then jump between the spikes at 45%. This is easily the easiest coin in the level, as the only hard part is just getting the first key. As for the last coin, first you need to make a random jump into a block to collect a key. Then you need to collect all 15 mini coins in the 80% ship part to unlock a skull. Once you have both those things, a new route gets unlocked at 94%. And this new route has some of the tightest jumps in the level. Needless to say, it's the hardest and most complicated coin in the level, and the fact that you don't get it until the end, when your nerves are at their highest, made me too scared to go for this coin. I'm at least happy I got the first 2 coins though. 2 out of 3 isn't bad. I kept pressing on with Dark Travel in the meantime, eventually getting 71% on the 24th of March.
This was big because getting past the space part meant it was only a matter of time before I beat the level. I had done plenty of runs from 63 to the end in practice mode, and I think I even did 54 to 100 at one point, which includes the entire duel up to the end of the level. It really felt like I was making good progress, especially considering how fast I had been all month in comparison to January and February. However, nothing could prepare me for what happened next. The 28th of March 2023 started just like any other day. I may have been 3 months and a day into my grind at this point, but it didn't really bother me that much. I had cooked throughout March and was just playing until I got that one lucky attempt to 100%. And then, I started getting a new best. I got past the spider part at 71%, the minicube at 73%, the tight robot clicks and the UFO part at 75%, The ship part with all the coins that forms a part of the third user coin that I previously discussed. And then the level slowed down. I was at 84% and was freaking out deep inside. I knew that this was my chance to finally beat the level, and I kept going, past the ship part and into the last big choke point of the level. 87% to 91% is full of tight ball and UFO timings. However, I made it past all the tough clicks. This was it. This was the attempt I was waiting for. All I had to do was a few more UFO clicks and then I'd be at the end of the level. But then...
No!
90%. 90% on dark travel. This was absolutely devastating. I had been grinding for 3 months at this point, and I really should have beaten it, but I didn't. I've had similar fails before on other levels, like getting 97% on both Windy Landscape and Ultrasonic, but I was able to beat those levels soon after. However, this fail felt different. Both of those levels I've mentioned didn't take nearly as long as I had spent on dark travel at this point. And the fact that this was much longer than every other Insane Demon I had played just added salt to an open wound. After getting 90%, I kept grinding, but I was playing terribly. Day after day, week after week, I was making no progress at all. So in the middle of April, I took a brief holiday, thinking that a break could help. And it kind of did. The holiday allowed me to recharge after almost 3 months of grinding, and I think it may have helped a bit. I was still struggling a lot, but in early May, I managed to finally get another attempt far into the level, and I got past 90% and into the final part. There's not a lot of difficult timings here, besides 98%, and I love the piano that plays here. However, the visibility is an issue, and this being the first time I had made it here in over 4 months of playing, it felt like I was almost having a mini heart attack. I made it through all the jumps as carefully as I could, and made it to the final robot part. However, as I jumped over the triple spikes, I got even more nervous than ever, and ultimately, I fumbled.
No!
I had accidentally clicked too late and jumped right into the spike. This was officially the worst fail I had ever suffered. And this was the moment that it really began to sink into me. I had been playing the same level for almost 5 months. Going into this, I thought this would be one of the easiest Insane Demons that I'd ever do. I mean, it was literally rated as a hard demon a few years ago. But it seems as if, like the rest of the GD community, I'd severely underestimated how hard this level was, and I just couldn't beat it. I was starting to get bored of the level, and I slowly began to play other levels just to break up the pace a bit, thinking maybe it could help me beat dark travel. However, all it did was made me want to play something other than dark travel, considering I was having so much more fun playing other demons than this behemoth. And to top this all off, this was also around the time that I discovered that I'd lost all of my stream VODs and footage. I don't exactly know what happened to the recordings I've been piling up to this day. The most I could theorize was that they were just accidentally deleted when I was doing a big clear out of my storage. But it didn't really matter how they disappeared. The fact was, almost 5 months of footage was gone, and the only bits of footage that survived were a few YouTube shorts I had uploaded whenever I made significant progress. I think the final nail in the coffin was about a week after I got 94%, when I entered into another exam period in school. However, these weren't just any ordinary exams, these were my A-levels. For context, if you don't live in the UK, A-levels are the last exams that you take before you leave school. Yeah, this whole time I've been playing dark travel, I was also in my final year of school. And these A-level exams lasted for a whole month. And it really became a problem for me now, because my exams were so important and took so much time that I wasn't able to play Jump Trash at all. And when I could, I played so badly and was so bored of dark travel that I just couldn't make any progress. My A-levels were over by the end of June 2023. At this point, I'd been on dart travel for 6 months straight. I was exhausted and just wanted it to end. But staring right in front of me were 2 options. Do I either continue mindlessly grinding, creating even more boredom with the level and the game and get potentially nowhere? Or do I drop the level, refocus my attention on other aspects of the game, and maybe return to it after a break? It was a hard decision for me, because I hate giving up on things, especially considering I've made so much progress. But as you can probably guess, I eventually chose the second option. On the 3rd of July 2023, I officially announced that I was dropping dart travel. While I stated that I wanted to try and beat the level at some point, I knew that continuing would just make me enjoy the game even less, and that wasn't something I wanted. And that was that. Dart travel was done. It had won, and I walked away from the battle. So, after I dropped dart travel, what did I do next? Well, I started by just playing some easier levels. My channel at this point had seen a bit of a content drought in terms of GD content because of dart travel, and playing these easier levels helped give me plenty of videos to make. One of my videos even randomly got 1,000 views at this time, which was pretty amazing. Geometry Dash also celebrated its 10-year anniversary, and officially confirmed 2.2 for October 2023, which was really exciting. It didn't get released in October, or November for that matter, but just the fact that we knew it was close was good enough for me. I also began marathoning aspects of the game, first rebeating all the gauntlets, which took me just under a month to do, and after surpassing 100 subscribers in November 2023, I also began a marathon of all the map packs, which I'm still doing to this day. Cause I gotta make it past this part. I didn't return to Insane Demons until the end of 2023, where I beat Poltergeist in December. It was a big moment for me as it was officially my first Insane Demon in over a year. Plus, unlike dart travel, it has only taken me 6 weeks to beat. Unlike 6 months. It was good to have another Insane Demon at last, and it remains my hardest wave-based level to this day. After that though, I didn't really have time to focus on hard levels, as 2.2 finally released, and I had to put all of my attention on the new levels and gauntlets that came with it, as well as the map pack marathon I previously mentioned. A few months later, after beating 30 map packs, I took a break from them and beat another Insane Demon, Stalemate. This is commonly referred to as one of the easiest Insane Demons in the game, and I managed to beat it in just over a week. Oh my word, I finally beat it! Wow! Not before having one of my worst fails ever though. Despite that fail, I still enjoyed the level, and completing it in just over a week gave me some confidence. No, I wasn't quite ready to return to dart travel yet, but there was another Insane Demon that had previously scared me in the past, that I thought maybe I could beat. That demon was Acropolis, one of the most iconic Insane Demons in the game. It's completely timing based and gets really intense towards the end with the wave. However, the first cube was easily the hardest part of the level, having close to extreme demon level clicks. This was supposed to keep me occupied for a few weeks, and as I expected, I was struggling with the beginning. But then, out of complete nowhere, I fluked the entire level from 52%. What?! This wasn't supposed to happen! I expected Acropolis to take me a few weeks to complete, but I'd somehow managed to beat it in less than a week of streaming. What an upset that was. Genuinely one of the most amazing things I've ever done in this game.
Completing Acropolis did give me one problem though.
I didn't know what to do next. I had a few other Insane Demons in mind, which I was going to decide while doing Acropolis, but after fluking that level, I was so stunned that I just couldn't decide what to do. That wasn't too bad though, because a few days after Acropolis, I finally started university, and I quickly dropped out after 6 weeks. Look, it was too expensive and I just couldn't get engaged with the course I was doing. I also caught the flu and COVID within a few weeks of each other during this time, which was just great. Because of everything that was happening during this period, I didn't really play the game for a few weeks. However, while I was ill, I was still thinking about insane demons that I could do next, and I suddenly remembered dart travel. I had been scared to touch it for over a year at this point, but after beating my most recent insane demons, especially fluking Acropolis, I started thinking about returning to my most feared level. So, after recovering from COVID, I began to practice the level in secret throughout November, and was stunned to not only have the muscle memory to do each part, but also translate that into doing massive runs, like randomly getting 35% in November and doing 63 to 100. At this moment, I knew I had to give this another go. I knew that I needed to beat this. I'd spent too long stuck at 94% and I needed to get this over with, but I didn't want to rush. I began teasing my return to this level on YouTube through my community posts, while I continued to practice on the side. I wasn't going to make the same mistake of not practicing the level enough this time. It was a little hard to practice thoroughly because I got myself a temporary second job working entire night shifts at a supermarket, but even then, I felt confident I could do dart travel, and after my contract with the store ended, I knew it was time. Time to end this saga once and for all. On the 27th of December 2024, exactly 2 years after my first dart travel stream, I went live on Twitch and announced that I was returning to the level at last. After I began streaming though, I ran into an unexpected obstacle. Lag. Anyway, the duel. I'm at 50 frames. Why am I at 50 frames a second? Oh no. It took me a while to figure out why this was happening, but it turns out that OBS, the app I was using to record and stream my gameplay, was all to blame. For context, during my first stint on this level, I was using Twitch Studio to stream, and it didn't really have any effect on the level. Unfortunately, Twitch Studio got discontinued in 2023, so I was forced to find another application to stream, and I figured I'd just go with OBS, seeing as it's the most popular one to my knowledge. For some reason though, OBS makes everything laggier when active. I wasn't able to figure out a solution to this, but it wasn't really a big problem until I began playing levels with high object counts, like Anarchy Road and Sinless Ash. I didn't expect it to be a problem for dart travel though, considering I'd already played it in the past. And the worst part about this was, not only did it only ever happen at the duel, but the lag was inconsistent. Sometimes the game would run at a smooth 60 FPS, other times it would drop to as low as 30. Safe to say, I began to lose confidence in OBS at this point and would eventually look for another application to stream. I'll get to that later though. In the meantime, I just continued playing dart travel and just thought that I would have to get used to the lag. After my practice run, I began working my way backwards, doing 74 to 100. There we go. 74 to 100, let's go. And 63 to 100. Yes. Yes. Let's go. I was pretty happy with these runs, so I decided to do a few runs from zero, and surprised myself by actually getting to the duel. And that was a laggy mess. Let's go. Still, that's really good. Considering this was the first stream back, this was a really good start. I already had the level in almost 2 runs and couldn't wait to make more progress. On the 31st of December, I had multiple attempts of a duel, getting 59% and even 60% deep into the second half of the duel. 60%, let's go, 60%. On the 4th of January 2025, I got a run from 52% to 88%. Oh my word, that was such a good run! This gave me confidence that I could once again do a run from the duel all the way to the end. And on the 8th of January, I died to the duel mini-wave at 62%. Oh my word, 62%, wow. And it kept getting better from there. While doing a practice run on the 11th of January, I accidentally got a run of 58 to 100. That was an amazing run. Oh my word, that was an amazing run. That was from like 58. Oh my word, that was 58 to 100. What? This meant I had officially got the level in 2 runs for the first time since 2023, which was really amazing and began to show that I had become a better player. That could also be because of my muscle memory, but I digress. After that 18-month break, I was just so happy to be making such fast progress compared to last time, and this would go to show in the next stream. The stream I did on the 14th of January was particularly amazing. First of all though, I had an incident. I was at 40% in normal mode and someone in chat messaged me that my mic was on mute. Okay, that's really awkward. I forgot to turn on my mic. That is so awkward. That was pretty embarrassing, but a few minutes later though, it happened. I got past the duel. Let's go! Come on. This was now officially the first attempt for space parts since May 2023, and it took less than a month to get here. And the craziest part is that I nearly passed it. If only I didn't mess up a robot jump at 67%. Oh no, what happened there? Oh no! While I may have had a bit of a stupid death, that didn't deter me. I'd become really consistent and later on, I actually made it back to the space part and died in a panic at the 64% wave. Great, I panicked. Oh great, oh my word, I panicked. I panicked. This confirmed to me that I was back with this level. My progress had been extremely fast in comparison to my first stint, and if I just put in enough effort, I might actually be able to beat this very soon. I really wanted to continue this narrative of becoming a better player, but on the 16th of January, I actually didn't make any progress whatsoever. Well, you could argue that this was just an off day that people have. I think the reason why I didn't make any progress was because Nintendo Switch 2 got announced! Okay, I know this is supposed to be about Dart Travel, but just let me explain. Literally earlier in the day, I just cycled to a service station close to where I live and was eating lunch when I checked my YouTube feed on my phone and saw that Nintendo had just shadow dropped this reveal out of nowhere. I freaked out and cycled back home as fast as humanly possible so that I could post my reaction on my Let's Play channel. Seriously though, that was the fastest I've ever had to cycle in my life, and a good chunk of it was uphill, and I even got stuck behind a van towards the end. Why did you do that to me, Nintendo? Why did you have to publish the trailer at that time? Anyway, back to Dart Travel. As you can probably expect, since I cycled back so fast and was so overwhelmed by this news, I was out of breath and didn't really play well. In fact, I got stuck there for over a week. It could have just been a case of the old mind block, but my streams were also quite short for a level of this length during this time. While I wasn't getting any new bests, I did decide to go for some runs to 100%. I began doing runs from 52%, and I managed to get an amazing run. I passed my previous best of 88% and made it to the robot part, where I received a bad omen. Oh my word, really? Disappointing death, but that was still an amazing run. The next day, I went from 52% again, and I managed to fix my run from the previous day. That was 52 to 100. I got 52 to 98 last night. Wow! Great, now I really have to consider doing I don't know, 30 or 43 to 100 maybe, I don't know. As you just heard, I was considering creating another start position copy from earlier in the level, and that's exactly what I did the next day. I made a copy and started playing from 43%. I was only going to play until I got a run from there to 63%. However, I somehow managed to do that in 2 attempts, and I went much further than I was intending to. I've only just created that start position. Oh my word. I've only just created that. 2 attempts! Yeah. 43 to 100%. That was crazy, especially only 2 attempts after creating the copy. This really gave me confidence that I could beat the level soon. However, while I was getting all these runs, I still wasn't getting any new bests. I had occasional attempts for space parts, but those basically only happened once per stream on average. And I thought the big reason for this was because the majority of my streams were short, per se. It was evident that I really needed to change the format if I was going to beat this. Otherwise, I might end up in the same situation I was in 2023. So, I decided that I needed to change strategies. If short streams weren't going to get me to 100%, Then it was time for me to sit down and play the long game. The 25th of January 2025 started just like any other day. I woke up, went to work, got home, did a little bit of editing, had supper, and then, at 7 o'clock in the evening, I began what would turn into the longest stream I ever did on this level, clocking in at about 3.5 hours. I began by getting 43 to 100 about 25 minutes into the stream. I began having thoughts about doing another run from earlier, but I decided to just go from 0. Less than 10 minutes in, I already got past the duel, but unfortunately slipped at 66%. I think that was a lag spike, and that got me. Oh my words. Getting here this early after 43 to 100 was really promising, so I kept going. And then, about 58 minutes after beginning the stream, I got past the space part. For the first time since May 2023, I had a decent shot at making it to the end of the level. However, I unfortunately suffered a misclick at 77%. I clicked. I swear I clicked there. This and the lag at the duel just made it feel like the level was cheating at this point. I could feel my heart pumping after that death. So, after a quick break, I got back at it, and I managed to get 72% just over half an hour later. Really? Oh my word. One attempt past the space part would have been perfect for me. Getting a second attempt to the last third of the level was amazing. I couldn't believe it. But then, less than 10 minutes later, it happened again. I got past the space part and had another shot at beating this. I pressed on, past the spider part where I died, past the UFO part where I died, and this officially became the best attempt since my return just under a month ago. And I kept going, past the ship part with all the mini coins at 80%, past the slow cube and ship parts, past the ball and UFO parts with the tricky timings that had previously caused me despair at 90%. And then, I was at the last part of the level. I breezed past the final cube, and then the robot arrived. I got past the first 2 jumps, and then came across 94%. My current best on this level. Would I finally pass the jump that ended my stint last time? The answer? Yes. This was now the best attempt I ever had on this level. My heart was on the brink of jumping out, but I kept going. It was all or nothing now. I continued making ground, and then there were 2 jumps left. I jumped over 97% with no trouble. Now there was just 1 jump left. 1 more jump before I would finish this level off once and for all. I knew the stakes were high, and I knew that I could finally put an end to the story. All I needed to do was 1 more jump. However, sensing how nervous I was, the level pulled one last punch to the gut. What? You might be wondering, what went wrong? Well, in typical JonathanGD fashion, the last jump is stupidly hard. I mentioned before how the visibility in this final part is really limited, and it gets harder to see as you get closer to the end. And for the final challenge, you have to jump over a triple spike. It's not normally too bad, but there's also a spike out of view above you just before the triple spike, meaning if you jump too early, you jump right into that spike and get potentially scarred for life, especially if you didn't know about it in the first place. However, I knew about this and had practiced this jump a stupid number of times, and I got it in my head that I had to click not too early. Unfortunately, in making sure not to jump too early, I accidentally clicked too late, and I didn't make it over the first spike. And, as a result, I got potentially the worst fail I've ever had in this game up to this point, and was completely devastated once again. However, something felt different. When I got 90% and 94% in 2023, I got mind blocked and became really demotivated because I'd spent months getting to those points. and I eventually just gave up. So, based on that, history would repeat itself again, right? Well, not this time. I had returned to Dark Travel less than a month ago, and I'd made staggering progress. In such a small amount of time, especially compared to last time, I'd been able to completely relearn the level, get consistent again, get the best run I'd ever achieved from a start position, and, in this stream, I may have died at 98%. But that also meant I'd surpassed my previous record. So, rather than moan about it, I celebrated this as an achievement. This has been a really successful stream. I'm gonna keep going. No, I'm not gonna let that bother me. Okay? I got 98%. So what? It may be the worst fail I've ever had in this game, but I've come a long way since 2023. I wasn't going down that easily this time. I was really motivated now, and I decided to stream for longer than I was intending to because I knew I could do this. The level may have thought that this would be an easy fight, but the tables were turned. I no longer underestimated this. It underestimated me. And 1 hour and 45 minutes after I got 98%, I didn't actually beat the level. Look, it was 11:30 at night, I was really tired and I needed to sleep. But I didn't care. I continued playing the level a few days later because I was so determined to beat this now. And after finally getting rid of OBS because the lag became too extreme, I downloaded Streamlabs and the lag was gone! I could finally play this level in its full glory without it hindering me, and I locked in! And then, on the 30th of January 2025, 2 years, 1 month and 3 days, or 766 days after my first stream on this level, it happened. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you my completion of Dark Travel by JonathanGD. What? How on earth did I die like that? And I just cracked my finger. Just standing up for a moment. Nothing too serious, just standing up. Okay, right, sit back down now. Great. Great, my cat wants to come in now. Right. Let me just die first. Go. Oh my god! Oh my god! Oh my word! Oh my word! Oh my word, it's over! It's actually over! I've been waiting 2 years to see this screen. Great, I'm actually getting quite emotional. Kind of. It's over at last. Well, as of writing, it's been just over 2 months since I beat Dark Travel. Funny how the time flies. I do have some final thoughts about this level. First of all though, how many attempts did this level take? Well, I counted on stream and the total came to 12,278. However, I later found another copy of the level I'd created off stream, which added an additional 35 attempts. That brings the total number of overall attempts I spent trying to beat this level to 12,313. While this is a lot, keep in mind when I returned to the level at the end of 2024, I had 10,476 old attempts, mostly from 2023. So the amount of attempts I spent between December and January was about 1,837. I think that really goes to show how much I've improved as a player, considering how much of a difference there is in the attempt counts between my failed and successful stints, and for that, I'm absolutely grateful. Now about the level itself. As I've said throughout this video, I had terrible luck with this, from taking ages to do, to suffering from all the mind block I had. Despite those things, I still really like this level. Yes, the level has its choke points, and I got particularly unlucky, but they're not enough to take away from the enjoyment of this level. I mentioned this at the start, but beating this has always been a dream of mine, and while it was a struggle, the level has so many fun and poignant moments throughout that it makes it worth beating. If the level wasn't fun, I'm not sure I would have been able to beat it, let alone return after dropping the level. So, do I recommend this? Absolutely. If you've beaten other Insane Demons. I wouldn't do this as a beginner Insane Demon, especially factoring in my experience, but if you've beaten other levels of a similar difficulty or harder, definitely consider this. As long as you don't underestimate this, you should be home free. And with that, I think I've talked about this level for long enough. If you've been watching the whole video up to this point, you are absolutely amazing for sticking by this long. Consider liking and subscribing if you enjoyed. This video took about 2 months to make and I'd really appreciate all the support I can get. And finally, from the bottom of my heart, thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you all later.